Hello and welcome to I Can't Believe It's Not the Mouse, the podcast all about animation not made by the mouse. I'm your host, Octaviano, and today I'm going to be talking about a series, talking about the series as a whole. It's not going to be just a single episode, and that's because it's currently at least a mini-series. It's a sequel series. It is based on a movie that honestly I didn't think was ever going to get a sequel anyway, so it was kind of great that it did because it's a movie that I really like, and that's Sausage Party. The show being Sausage Party Foodtopia. Before we get started, I just want to say if you're listening to this on YouTube, go ahead and give it a like, subscribe to the channel, feel free to comment, and ring the bell for notifications. Also, if you're on Spotify or just any other podcast site, follow this show on those platforms. For those of you who are completely unaware, Sausage Party was a 2016 parody of essentially family features, but mostly Pixar. It's a CG animated film by Seth Rogen. Well, other people involved, Conrad Vernon, for example, was the director. It's garnered controversy for multiple reasons. The most serious one, which I will say was bad, was that the animators were overworked and underpaid. I don't know if that's the case with this one. I think it's not, just because it seems that Seth Rogen, after that whole thing, did get better about handling animation. At least that was the case for Ninja Turtles. So I'm hoping this is not the case here. Regardless, it was bad there. Not gonna apologize for that. Obviously, I wouldn't be the one to apologize, but I don't feel like, it deserves any kind of points for that. I will say that the movie is still entertaining despite that, but that it was definitely a bad thing about it. The other things that it was controversial about it was the fact that it was an R-rated anime feature, and of course you always got people who are just going to be mad about that just because, cartoons should be for kids. And then there's people who think cartoons should be for adults too, but don't like it when the adult cartoons swear and talk about sex and all that stuff. Now, admittedly, some of them are well-meaning in terms of just being like, look, we want shows or movies that do these kinds of things, to do things beyond just saying those things, which I agree. That being said, I feel like a lot of people who complain about this movie just being nothing but swears and talk about sex either ignore the movie or just haven't seen the movie and just base it off of the little clips that they've seen, because I'm like, the movie itself is a commentary on religion. It is definitely a parody of Pixar in terms of, hey, look, it's a thing that comes to life and worships humans. Only in this case, it's taken to an extreme where it's like, what if it's a thing that humans use and destroy? So it definitely is a lot smarter than a lot of people give it credit for. I feel like Sausage Party, aside from being a really funny movie, was a lot smarter than a lot of people thought it was. And to be fair, a lot of people do genuinely enjoy it. It was a movie that was praised, so it's not like I'm here being like the outlier. It's just that when you look at it from the animation community, where it's taking the animation fans like on Twitter or whatever, it feels like it's gotten way more hate than it really deserves. So it is nice to just be like, hey, look, it's not that bad. It's actually kind of smarter. It's really smarter than it needs to be. So going into this show, I was always wondering, okay, so what are they going to do? Because in the last movie, and this is big spoilers, it ended it off with a pretty big cliffhanger where the characters realize that they're basically puppets of the real life actors and whatnot. So they're going into our world to kill off Seth Rogen, Edward Norton, all these people. And the show doesn't do that. And I kind of understand why. I feel like there is an interesting story to tell with that, but it's probably much more limiting. So they probably just decided to dial back and go like, okay, well, the original ending for this movie, before we settled on that, was supposed to be that they would start a food uprising and start attacking other people. So we pick up from that perspective, where it's been who knows how long, and the food is killing off other people. It's pretty much the end of the war, at least from their perspective. They start celebrating once again for their success, only for it to be all washed away, literally, by the rain. Because they're unaware of what the rain is, they're unaware of how to handle it. As a result, the food has just faced another catastrophe. And you have Seth Rogen's character, Frank, and thankfully they do bring back the cast members of the movie. The only people that don't come back in the show at all, which I'll get to in a bit. What I assume happened there, aside from the obvious that the actor probably didn't want to come back. I don't think Salma Hayek wanted to come back. She famously was disturbed by a lot of this stuff, understandably. You start off with this whole catastrophe. As a result, Frank and Brenda, which is the Kristen Wiig, hot dog bun love interest, decide like, okay, well, it's kind of it's kind of bad that we didn't save one human to kind of explain to us how to run society now that we won. So, okay, that seems, it seems like we're screwed over until it turns out that there are some humans left. So they decide like, okay, let's find one. We get to a new character that's going to be recurring throughout the whole show, Will Forte, and they get stuff out of it. Even though you have the Michael Cera, hot dog character, Barry, just being completely against the idea, but he doesn't have to know everything, right? That's the whole premise of the show. And of course, there's more to it. Eventually, we get introduced to a new villain. It's an orange character named Julius who starts running the society, and the whole show becomes a satire on just how to run a society, because it's pretty much like, well, we've won the battle against the humans, kind of like, still like your Planet of the Apes or whatever. How exactly do we run society now that they're not in charge? So it does have fun in creating society, making fun of our society. There are scenes where there are like, okay, well, there's some food residents that are stealing from other food residents. What do we do? Okay, let's create a anti-theft system where we hire some people who hopefully won't go mad with power, to stop these people, and they even have jokes with that. Much like with the movie, they have some really bad puns in there, funny bad puns. Oh look, one of the cops is iced tea, named Iced Tea, because get it, Law and Order. The whole show goes around from that. I'm not gonna go into too much detail. One, because it's fairly recent. Two, I think you should watch it. And three, it's just funny. Much like the movie, it's really funny. I think it can be a little funnier than the movie, but I don't know. I still think the movie is better than the show overall. The show runs for 8 episodes, and admittedly, I kind of feel like they could have shortened it out to be a whole movie. I won't say that it's as bad as like a lot of the Disney Plus shows, like the Marvel ones, even the ones that I like, admittedly, where it feels like, oh yeah, this is literally just a movie. It doesn't feel like a show, because each episode for the most part does kind of feel like it's set up like a show. That being said, the plot line and everything, I still feel could have worked as a movie itself, but they didn't go that way, so I am judging it as a show. I will say, as a sequel, ignoring whether it's a movie or a show, it's easily the best animated sequel we've gotten all year. And I say this enjoying Kung Fu Panda 4. Inside Out 2 was pretty good. Despicable Me 4, I mean, you already know how Despicable Me movies are like. Wasn't horrible, but wasn't exactly good either. This one, I think, is a lot better than any of those, just because it's funny, it continues a lot of the themes from the original, and it builds off of it to a point where it's like, yeah, this feels like an actual progression, despite being a totally retcon way of going about it, because we changed the ending of the movie to better fit what the story was. I don't know, maybe their plans are to create 2 alternate versions where it's like, who knows, maybe they'll actually make that movie someday, and it'll be continuing off of the movie, and then the show will get like the alternate universe. I don't know if that's a plan, but it would be interesting if they go about it that way. But for what it's worth, yes, the show is very, very good. I thoroughly enjoyed it. There is an episode, I will say up front, before we take a little break, where I will say that the show goes a little far. And to be fair, Amazon even warns you about it. It's in the 6th episode. There's a warning. They're not doing that for shits and giggles. There is a very nasty scene. I'll say this much. I'm not. I don't want to spoil it, but at the same time, I kind of feel like maybe I should say it just in case, if you are interested, just to be aware of what to expect on that episode. There is, like I said, a human character voiced by Will Forte, and Frank, the Seth Rogen hot dog, does start to bond with the character. And if you know anything about bonding in the show and bonding in the movie, what that eventually leads into, I think you can figure out what's so nasty in the episode. And trust me, it is. I mean, it's funny. But I'm not gonna lie. I kind of was trying to hold my, I don't know, like I had my gag reflex going, and like I was ready to kind of vomit a little once the whole thing pays off. And yeah, I just beware. Look, I mean, as it is, this is a show that's made for adults, so it's obviously kind of nasty and kind of gross. So it's not like something you'd watch, with your kids or maybe even with your parents. But that's definitely one where it's like, yeah, be careful of where you're watching it because it gets very nasty. Some of the cast members don't come back for the show. Like I said, some of them were likely just because they didn't want to, like Selma Hayek. And it probably is true for the rest of them. That being said, it is noticeable that a lot of the characters that are missing from this that were in the movie are the more offensive characters. If you remember, one of the offensive things in the movie was that they were all in on stereotypes. And to be fair, I get why some people would be very offended by that, and I, truly understand. To be fair, have you seen our food? There's a lot of products that do emphasize on stereotypes. Now, granted, there are some changes since when the original came out, which was back in 2016, where like, okay, Aunt Jemima does not feature Aunt Jemima anymore. Uncle Ben does not feature Uncle Ben anymore. So there's been changes based on like, okay, well, this was kind of an offensive caricature, so let's get rid of it. But they're still out there. I mean, I can still get a Tapatio bottle with a stereotypical Mexican on it. So to me, that always felt like that was commentary on that. Just the fact that, like, hey, we put in a lot of these foods with caricatures on them, and they're still around. Granted, less now, so okay, we've made some progress, but we still see, even without the characters, some packaging is kind of on the, like, yeah, we're almost begging to be racist about it. It doesn't really bother me too much because it's like, look, there's so many worse things around in the world, but it is something that it's like, yeah, that's definitely something that we have. So, with that acknowledged, I get why they chose to make that joke. That being said, I get why a sequel would just completely disregard those jokes. That's not to say that there isn't any kind of racial jokes in here. Edward Norton is back as Sammy Bagel Jr., and of course, he still plays it up as a very stereotypical Jewish caricature. That being said, I do feel like that's more or less just like, look, Seth Rogen is involved with this, so he can make fun of himself, but when it comes to other races, it's like it's a little harder to deal with because even the tequila bottles that you see in this that still might have some of the features that they originally had from like the movie where it's like the mustache and whatnot are not played up stereotypically as they were in the movie. And that seems to be the case of why a lot of these characters are missing. You don't get the fire water character that was voiced by Bill Hader, but was supposed to be like a Native American. You don't get Mr. Gritz, who was played in the movie. I mean, it's obviously supposed to be a parody of like the Mr. Chips character, but we got rid of a lot of those stereotypical characters. Even a major plot point in this being that Sammy can't get over the fact that Lavash is gone, who I'm not sure if Krumholtz ever actually came back to do the lines that he has in this show, or if it was someone else. It was so quick that I was kind of unsure, and I honestly didn't look it up, so it could be someone else, but regardless of it, the racial caricature characters are pretty much gone in this. Again, understandably, I don't feel bothered by their loss, but it is kind of noticeable just because it's like, yeah, that was a big part of the original, but I get it. It is very offensive, and you sometimes have to make some changes in order for things to work out. Beyond that, it does really tie into being a sequel to the movie. It does continue on, like I said, the themes like, hey, well, the last one was about religion, and we already kind of conquered that. So now let's focus more on the society aspect of this. Like, How do these people interact with each other, or food, I guess? How do they create their society? And of course, they even acknowledge, like, at some point, like, dude, you're just recreating human society, but with food, and more specifically, Western human society, with a lot of the stuff where it's like, instead of money, you're using teeth, and you do have your healthcare system, but it's bad because you know you have to pay for it and all that stuff. They eventually even have a whole presidential election. Things go wrong there. Not gonna go into too much about it, but yeah, it is a very smart show, very funny. I highly recommend it if you're a fan of the original. If you're not a fan of the original, you probably won't be convinced otherwise of this one. What I will say, if you're not a fan of the original, give it a shot if you legit have not watched it and are just going off of what you think it is. If you did watch it, kind of sad that you didn't enjoy it, but I understand it won't be for everyone. That being said, I do hope it is for reasons that make more sense than just, well, I didn't just like the slurs and whatnot, because it's like, well, yeah, you were going into an R-rated movie. What did you expect was going to happen, especially an R-rated comedy? I understand that stuff is not for everyone, but I feel like some of the complaints that get lodged at this and other adult stuff that has that stuff always just comes off less as, this is not for me, and more like, well, this is wrong because I don't like it, which is two completely different things. Like, look, even if you don't like it, other people will. I'm not saying you necessarily have to give it a pass for that, but just take into consideration, instead of acting all like, oh, this is not good because no one should like it or whatever. I've seen people say things like, oh, well, who wanted this sequel series? And it's like, I don't know, ask the people who enjoyed the original movie. That's who wanted it. There's plenty of people, it's not like this movie got like a negative Rotten Tomato meter or whatever. I don't think it did. I'm pretty sure it was very well praised from when it came out. I remember it being praised. So there's plenty of people who wanted this, or at least are glad to hear that it's happening. Personally, I just feel like, cut your own biases out of it. If you don't like it, fine, but don't act like everyone has your mentality. Don't act like this is some kind of stain on the earth just because you personally didn't enjoy it. Let others have their fun. I mean, a lot of you probably say that about animation anyways whenever people comment on it being for kids only, so it is disappointing that when you get one that is genuinely for adults, and adults specifically, you guys decide to act the same way that a lot of anti-animation people do. Only difference is that you're complaining about the fact that it's the wrong kind of adult show, and it's like, we don't need this to be the wrong or the right kind of adult show. We just need it to be good. Whatever is the right kind of adult thing for you will come if you support various things and show that people want more. Again, you don't have to even watch this. I'm just saying that by telling others that they can't enjoy it, you're essentially trying to limit the art form every bit as much as the people who say that it's only for kids. Something to consider, but regardless of that, Sausage Party Foodtopia, very funny show. If you enjoyed the movie, you're going to enjoy the show. I still feel like it's the best sequel based on an animated feature that we've gotten so far this year. Who knows if that'll continue being true. I mean, we got a new Wallace and Gromit movie coming out this year. Regardless of it, I really enjoyed it. I think you'll really enjoy it if you have an open mind or enjoyed the original. Go check it out. I want to say thank you for listening, and I hope to see you again next time.
Oh, great, fantastic. What a waste of time.
Aside from all the liberated foods, yeah.
Thanks for stopping by. Go ahead and follow this channel. Subscribe, like and comment, ring the bell for notifications. Go ahead and also follow my podcast and give some love to my Patreon account while you're at it. It's www.patreon.com/saicams. Again, thanks for stopping by, and I hope you come back for more in the future.